Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. On the program today, we're going to take a look at planetary healing with an urgent message to humanity that we are advised to look to the wisdom of the First Nations of people for guidance on harmonious living with the natural world. Our guest today is the founder of the Viral Energy Institute for Personal, Interpersonal, and Planetary Well-Being. The Viral Energy Institute is dedicated to research, study, and education in a new field of study called viralinology. We're going to learn about certain things such as future technological advancements, including the hint at fuel solution for interstellar travel at light speed, the replacement for all plastics and crude oil, and what's to come in communication devices. I'd like to welcome the Beyond 50 radio program today, our guest, Penelope Jean Hayes. Penelope, thank you for being on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Well, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Now, let's talk about this journey that led you to where you are today.
So as you said in the lovely introduction, I am the founder of the Viral Energy Institute, and I study something called viralinology, and that is the study of contagious energy and social interaction and the environments all around us. So basically we know that a smile is infectious and laughter is contagious, and these are very simple examples of the contagious nature of light energy, and also the heavy energy is the same. So this is what we study at the Institute, and those implications on us on a personal level, our personal happiness, as well as the success of our interpersonal relationships, and planetary wellness. So it extends to the planetary, the global level, and contagious energy is found all around us. So in terms of my journey, it was back in, I believe it was 2006 or 2007. I was meditating in a forest outside of Nashville, Tennessee, where I lived at that time. And I had been doing this on a regular basis. I would go into the forest, bring a pen and a paper to take notes and write. I was beginning my writing career at that time. And I would just sit in the forest quietly, meditate, just be at peace. Well, this one day, Daniel, things shifted. And it was an experience that was rather profound that was, so what happened was I had been in the forest that day for about 4 hours. And all of a sudden, things started feeling differently. Things started changing. I started seeing things more vibrantly. The colors around me seemed vibrant. And all of a sudden, this little chipmunk kind of walked by and walked right over my toe. And then shortly thereafter, a deer walked right very close within a few feet of me. And then after that, this giant owl flew in and sat right in front of me on a branch, and I was sitting on a cliff overhang. And so this owl was maybe 5 feet from me and stayed and shared space with me for 20 or 30 minutes. And in that, I realized that my energy had synchronized with the environment around me, that I had been marinating in this beautiful light energy of nature for long enough that I had lost all of the, the hopped up stuff that we come with from our day, from the city, our relationships. And my energy had balanced with the larger energy around me. And that's when I wrote the concept of viral energy, which became a book, and now it's a whole institute.
It's fascinating that you share the story about how you come into nature and you balance yourself in it with the energy, because I suggest this to a lot of people. That it's sort of like the Native Americans say, if you ever have a little trouble or a challenge in your life, just go out to the woods and listen to the wind. And there's an inherent deep wisdom to that, because I love doing that. Or, in the evening, going and looking into the sky and watching the stars, just seeing what comes through, especially in light of a lot of the things that a lot of people are experiencing today, is like the COVID-19 situation going on here. And I know that you talk in your book, The Likely Future. In fact, it's a book that I think it's a two-part series, as I understand it.
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
And in this one, there's the channeling of, I guess you would call it, a interplanetary being known as Pax. Now, I kind of got curious as I'm seeing that about the movie K-Pax.
No relation, but
I didn't think so, but it comes to mind.
I haven't even seen that movie. I only know, I think it's Kevin Spacey. There's no relation at all, but we did an interview on Coast to Coast just in the last couple of weeks, and someone afterwards had commented was there any relation to that movie? And I still haven't seen the movie, so I've heard what you're talking about, but no relation at all. I can tell you who Pax is. So I now have 12 published books, and my viral energy books are quite separate from what we're here to talk about today, which is the Pax Wisdom books. And the Pax Wisdom books are, I had been working on the outline for my next book, which was to be titled Do Unto Earth. And it was taking this viral energy message to the planetary scale and the implications of energy en masse. So you think about industries and what sort of negative energies they leave behind and how that impacts. It's a really basic way to look at it. And that was the idea. Then I was contacted by a woman by the name of Carol Serene Borgens, who is an energy channeler, so a spirit channeler. And she and I had been acquainted because I had gone to her for some channeling sessions. And she knew through that, she knew what I was working on. So when I had gone for some sessions for channeling, asking spirit questions all about my vocation. So they weren't questions about, relationship stuff. These were questions about, the Institute and our direction there and my next book and, these type of things. So she knew what I was working on. And one day I got a contact from Carol saying that Pax, who is the spirit energy that she channels, wanted to offer wisdom for what I was working on with the Viral Energy Institute. And this was for planetary healing and specifically environmental healing and unity amongst our people. And this is what, the project of that time was and continues to be. And so I thought this is great, to have support from spirit. It's kind of like knock me over with a feather. This is fantastic. So we started that, and it actually turned into so much material that it was a whole book, and it did adopt the title Do Unto Earth. And it was the perfect information, the perfect source of where to get the information for environmental healing. My background is as a journalist, and so I knew that I'd be setting out to, learn more, but I didn't know at the time where the information would come from, and that's where it came from. And one of my first questions, Daniel, for Pax as we were talking, and this is before we even had the name Pax, I just knew I was speaking to spirit, the spirit world or a spirit in the spirit world, and that Carol had channeled this very clear voice. And I didn't know who that was in the beginning, and so I asked at the beginning of our book, Do Unto Earth, who exactly are you? And the answer came back, we are one with the universe, not the universe alone. We are the divine universe, yes, and the God being, and the greater wisdom, that which knows and supports all, and is healing, non-judgmental, and tolerant, all-seeing, all-knowing, and peace. It was a beautiful explanation. So the kind of funny part of that story is that I then said, oh, that's very long. Do you have a moniker that I can call you? And that's where the name Pax came from. And he said, and it's not a he or a she, but Carol refers in the masculine because it's just how the energy feels to her. So Pax at that point said, you can call me Pax, and it means peace.
Now, I was also interested in the idea of the pandemic and the neurological interrupter. What is that exactly?
Right. So as we were writing Do Unto Earth, I'm asking questions. Carol's channeling. Pax is returning the answers from the spirit world. The pandemic hit. Basically, when it came to the United States, Pax interrupted our regular writing to bring us information about COVID is what happened. So I put that book aside, the book on the environment, Do Unto Earth, I put it aside, and within a week or two, we wrote 2 more books, and these 2 books are titled The Likely Future, Volumes 1 and 2. And the neurological interrupter that Pax tells us, now all of this information, half of it in that time frame has now come true, and so it's further validation to me that, wow, this is really some source. And the neurological interrupter, as Pax tells us, that as we develop vaccines, that we would be wise to look at what was successful with polio. So the one-time disease that is, that we have now cured, there were pharmaceuticals that went into trials at that time, Pax says, to look to what went into trials at that time and was found to be successful. And in that would be something that we could develop into a universal vaccine. So we have different vaccines now coming out from different pharmaceutical companies, and some have greater efficacy than others, and some are likely targeting certain strains of this virus and perhaps not others. So in looking for, because we now know that, this is mutated to many different strains of the virus. So in looking for a universal vaccine, the tip there is look to what was successful for polio, and that it would not be that, but it would be developed from that the scientists would look at that and they will develop it from that, and that it will be a neurological interrupter, and that when developed, this same cure or drug or vaccine, whatever term you want to place on it, will also be successful for Parkinson's disease, is what PAX told us, and that this is another neurological disease.
Wow, that's an amazing conclusion when you consider that sometimes we tend to think of things the other way.
There's so many things that are discovered while looking for something else. It's quite a phenomenon in medicine, and actually also in cosmetics and different things like that. I think I recall that Botox was actually a product first used, had something to do with heart patients, and then they found Botox. Now, not endorsing that product, I'm just saying that they do find, as they're working on one thing, they find something that's a cure for something else, and it's actually quite a common phenomenon.
Now, I'm curious too, as we're talking about the upcoming technology, things such as that, what we can do about our dependency on oil.
Yes. Well, we're at a very critical point with that. So PAX tells us that we have 8 to 12 years left before a fail-safe point is reached for the health and wellness of this planet. And that doesn't mean the end of the world in 8 to 12 years. That means that if we don't change our ways, and particularly all things crude oil, so plastic is made out of crude oil, and we're using it to run our automobiles, airplanes, our carpets are made out of crude oil. They're plastic. Carpets are plastic. Polyester clothing is plastic. So the plastic is everywhere. It doesn't return to the earth. And it's not just, the phone that we're holding or the pen that we're holding. Plastic is in things that you wouldn't even imagine are actually made out of plastic. There's paper is made out of plastic, like money is made out of plastic. All of these things don't return to the earth. And it's a major problem that only started in the last 100 years. We've done something in a short period of time that is truly asinine, that we continue to do it so mindlessly. And so PAX gives us many things. He says, well, first of all, we all have the power to make this change, and we, the consumer, drive what the corporations, what industry are making. So we have to take back our power, not blame it on the big bad corporations, but understand that we, the consumer, will turn this thing around, and we can turn it around in a short period of time. And every time we buy something, it's a vote on what we support. But he does give us the replacement to all plastic. So, I like to say this is like $1 billion idea. So he says to use hemp cellulose in place of crude oil for all of our plastics, and we can now call them plantics. And so hemp cellulose can make, the plastic wrap for your food, or plastic food storage containers, or, the microphone that might be sitting on your desk, car part, whether it's a soft plastic or a hard plastic. These things can be made instead with hemp cellulose and mixed with other plant fibers. Give it those consistencies of those different flexibilities or hardness to them. He also tells us that plastic in contact with our food is off-gassing toxins. So plastic off-gasses into our breathing air. You think about PVC piping, which is now our plumbing piping. Used to be copper, now it's PVC, just laced throughout our homes, like veins. These off-gas, in fact, PVC is the most toxic of all the plastics, and here it is all throughout our homes. When we cover our food in plastic, we store it in plastic, and that this plastic is off-gassing toxins into our food. So it's just one thing. We need to be extremely aware of plastic and our part in this ecosystem chain. We need to know where our products come from and where they go when we're done with them.
Well, it's so true, too, and to get us out of the mindset of being a consumer-driven society and to actually be more mindful about what we do. And I don't know how many times I've mentioned on this show, the best way that you vote and you make change is you do it through your wallet. It's pretty simple. I mean, look, if somebody like a Walmart can kind of move in the direction of organics,
You
as
got
far as
it.
food goes, then there must be something to the philosophy. How you spend your money is how you actually vote.
Oh, it's so true. And they didn't do it because they decided to do it. They did it because a whole bunch of their very top executives and marketers got together over several years of doing market studies, and they are trying to meet the demand of the people. So we changed. We changed as a population. Our consciousness is raising, and people are more aware of these things. And whether you shop at Walmart or Target for groceries or Publix or Whole Foods, everyone wants to be healthy, regardless of what your budget is. And it's, the knowledge base of the general population has become so high now that corporations are having to change because there's becoming this exposure about the chemicals that go into foods and pesticides on vegetables and steroids in meat. And so we're becoming more educated and aware, and we're speaking out. But we have the power to even take that to the next level. We can shut down all of that, and we can ask these corporations to change. Companies can retool. No one needs to go out of business. They can shift. They can get ahead of this and meet the demand of the population. So it's us that needs to raise our consciousness and to be part of the solution.
Now, as we look into all this too, I was kind of curious about, especially living in Arizona, the water storage crisis in some areas of the world and how that can be handled.
So I asked that question too, and we have water shortage in many places. We hear about it in California. There's also major water shortage in South Africa, Kuwait. There are places around the world that absolutely are running out of water. And Mexico City, there's places where it's absolutely critical that they do not have drinking water, and they're down to X amount of days or months of water left, and let's just hope it rains kind of a thing. So it's a major problem, and it's hard to understand that for the average person when we see water everywhere. So you see oceans filled with water, and you think, why can't we just desalinate this water? What's the big deal? Let's get on with it. Well, water desalination, the way we're currently doing it, is done through reverse osmosis. The process of reverse osmosis takes a tremendous amount of energy. So it's actually not a great way of doing it. We just don't have the advancements right now for desalinating water on a mass scale that would just, fix this problem, or they would have already done it. It takes so much electricity to, reverse osmosis water. So that's not the answer. What PAX did say is that we are to look at the soil. This is almost funny, to look at the soil of the great redwood trees in California, and that there is a component in the soil of the redwood trees that can desalinate salt water and actually clean water of toxins. And so my first reaction when I heard that was, well, first of all, it does sound really strange, but I'd be very interested for some scientist who works on these things to, look into that. What do you make of it? What might be there? But my first reaction was, oh no, do we really even want to include that in this book? Because is everybody going to run out to the great redwoods and start digging up soil, which would be a tragedy? So PAC says, oh no, we're not to touch these stands of wisdom, that we are to form a committee with the First Nations people alongside foresters and to take samples of this soil. Just samples is all that is needed, and that we can actually reverse engineer what is in that soil and recreate it without taking the soil from the redwood trees. And that once we recreate it, we are to share this wisdom with the world. So it's not to be monetized, it's not to be kept in the United States, but to be shared with the world.
Now, one of the things that I know the listeners will be intrigued with as you were talking about technology that will be able to get us out there perhaps past the moon and even traveling faster than the speed of light. Let's talk about what was revealed to you there.
Mm-hmm. So I was asking, the crude oil issue on our planet, looking at the cars and on-planet travel is, something that really it just, it hurts my heart that we haven't been able to get past the use of crude oil. When you think about pipelines leaking into indigenous land and poisoning the water, there are First Nations communities that they don't have clean water. Their water is poisoned, and they, talk about it and cry at the top of their lungs, and nothing's being done about it. It's not widely talked about. So that's something I first wanted to say. Then we started talking about, so PAX does give us some kind of breadcrumbs to that solution, and they are in the book To Unto Earth. Then we started talking about interstellar travel at the speed of light. So why have we, in all this time, not traveled past our own moon? I mean, mic drop, we haven't traveled past our own moon after all of these years of space exploration. So PAX says that the spirit world is blocking our ability to make those discoveries, to make the discoveries of that fuel that would make that possible. And that our scientists, when they get ideas, where do you think they're getting their ideas from, these tremendous inspirations? Well, they're coming from a higher source of consciousness, and then all of a sudden, they get this pop of an idea. So that is being blocked right now because of our, the warring nature of some people, the warring nature of some governments and nations who would want to plant flags on planets and say, we own this planet, we planted our flag first. It's pretty ridiculous, actually, in space, but that's exactly what would happen right now because our consciousness hasn't reached that level. We're still in a very infantile state in terms of that. So PAX did not, I really pressed this question because I was so interested, and I really tried to get something, more information on this. And he gives quite a bit in the book To Unto Earth, but he won't give the full recipe because he said that, this would get, it would get into the wrong hands right now. What he does say is to look to hydrogen, to look to the hydrogen atom. I asked if this was the same as, nuclear or what they're doing at CERN. And he said no, that, it is beyond this conversation. So there was language there that I wouldn't understand, but someone who deals with that, a physicist, someone who can, look at that information might garner a whole lot from it than the average person. So it's really interesting. He also said that in terms of traveling at the speed of light, getting to places, far outside of our own solar system, like going to other galaxies, that there would be kind of like two fuels involved. There will be one fuel that will get us out of our atmosphere and up into space, and it won't actually be a fuel as we think of it. So it's not a liquid. It's a no-fuel solution, which is sort of like an energy source that doesn't require a container to hold it, and that our airplanes will be like that in the soon time too, that we won't need, the fuel tank anymore, that we won't need to carry this heavy fuel anymore. So a lot of things will change when we make this discovery. It will change on-planet travel and off-planet travel. But that once we get into deep space, once we're already up, there's a second fuel that comes into play, and he said it will be found in dark matter. So dark energy in space, dark matter, would be something that we would not be generating on Earth and bringing with us. It wouldn't be like a generator of dark energy, but we're actually going to be tapping into dark energy in space. So it's like charging stations basically everywhere there's dark matter, which is everywhere in deep space.
Speaking of dark matter too, let's talk about black holes. That's something that seems to be confusing for a lot of people.
Right. So black holes, I think a lot of people mix that up with a wormhole, things like that. So our cosmologists know very little. They're only able to garner what they can measure with light. So light is how we measure everything in our universe. And so when we see what's going on at a black hole, and that rim in which we can determine that stuff is like falling inside of this vortex, it's falling inside of this black hole, we can measure all of that because we're able to measure light. And we don't know what happens after it falls into the black hole. That's just trajectory after that point. So people will say that it comes out somewhere else. It's sort of like a wormhole, falls in, and comes out somewhere else. And Pax is saying, nope, that's not the case with the black holes. That wormholes are a thing. There's something different. A wormhole is more like a superhighway in space. Get there fast, jump on this, the Euro super rail. That kind of a thing is what a wormhole is, like 2 points make them closer. What a black hole is, according to Pax, is it's a reservoir, and it fills up, like, think of like an acorn. It just fills up and it fills up and it fills up, and one day it spews its contents into space like a volcano. And that's what a black hole is, according to Pax.
And it's funny because I came to that kind of conclusion myself, and then I think I was watching Stephen Hawking one time, and then he was explaining that that's how it is, because you think of all the matter that goes into it, and it condenses to such a huge rate, and then it has to go somewhere, so it explodes outwards. And I thought, well, could that also be the philosophy of the Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, the Big Bang is really interesting, and it could possibly be. What Pax does say regarding the Big Bang is that it's not the inception of our universe. So, this changes a lot in terms of how we believe our universe was created. And he says that bigger bangs have happened, that this Big Bang that we have labeled the Big Bang, that it's kind of funny to the spirit world how much fanfare it gets because bigger bangs have happened. And it's not the inception of our universe. So that was kind of funny and interesting. And I think that the reality is we don't know a tremendous amount about our universe. We don't even know if the universe is convex or concave or flat. That's something they're trying to work out right now, and they're studying light in the universe and how it bends through the fabric of time-space in order to determine that. And they don't know the answer. There's quite a few things that are unknown. Cosmologists don't even know how the universe is expanding exponentially. And there's some theories on that. I think the last theory was developed in 1972 and by Alan Guth. And, to me, it doesn't hold water, and I've got another theory that the Viral Energy Institute has developed. We can talk about that on another show, but that Pax has validated what we're working on at the Viral Energy Institute, and that is that, look further, because this Big Bang, you think about an explosion, eventually it slows down, and those pieces of, those solids, those masses that are spreading out after this explosion would eventually slow. However, our universe, we now know, in very recent times, by the way, the last couple of decades, we now know that the universe is expanding exponentially, which means it's actually expanding faster and faster instead of slowing down. It's going faster and faster. So our cosmologists don't have an answer for that yet. And we do at the Viral Energy Institute, and we can chat about that sometime. But it is very interesting, and it's interesting to know that Pax validates that we need to dig further and look beyond the Big Bang.
Now, I know one of the most interesting things, especially when you consider this newest election, is the talk about the new Green Deal and the idea of climate change. Is this something that's man-made?
Yes, according to Pax, and my belief as well, is that climate change is anthropogenic climate change, which is man-made. So I asked that question in Do Unto Earth, and Pax confirmed that indeed this is man-made. And indeed, we are changing our climate, and it is the biggest problem that we have. And he says, when I asked, so what's our biggest problem for our environment? And he says pollution. I said, really, pollution? People say it's climate change. And he says, well, the two are connected. You can't unconnect those two. It is your pollution. So if you're looking for the root of how do we change climate change, well, you stop polluting. So we need to do that ASAP. We need to make changes immediately. We need to all hands on deck. We need to not be afraid to speak out. We need to not worry about being bullied because we stand up for the environment and because we believe in climate change. And, Pax, I asked about climate change deniers. I went for a walk one day, and on my walk happened to talk to two neighbors, and both neighbors, I don't even know how this, it's probably because I was working on it at the time. We started talking about climate change. Both neighbors said they don't believe in climate change. So it was a reality check for me that, the reality is that there are a lot of people who don't believe in climate change. And so I did ask PACs, for those that believe that, well, they can see the pollution. You can see in certain cities how, smoggy the air is. So you can't deny that we're polluting the environment. So I said, well, what do we tell these people to make them believe that there's climate change and that we caused the climate change? We're causing the. So PAC says that, that our climate does in fact go through cycles, as those would say that, it's just a matter of cycles. It ebbs and flows, temperature up and down over long periods of time, thousands of years. He says this is true. But in addition to that, what you've got right now, this last 100 years it would look like, if you looked at thousands of years of climate, it would look like waves evenly dispersed up and down. You've got your different cycles. And then right now what you've got is this pitch that goes up in the air like a check mark, and it doesn't plateau yet. There's no plateau on this thing yet. So something has happened since the Industrial Revolution, and we have to realize that it's not rocket science. Since the Industrial Revolution, we started doing everything differently. We're polluting our planet with impunity. The plastic situation has come up in the same period of time. We've got the Great Pacific Garbage Patch floating in the the Pacific Ocean, which is an actual island of collected plastic. It's an astronomical problem, and yet we just go through our daily lives like, this is not happening. Well, it is happening, and it will affect us. So if we like clean air and clean water and clean soil, and we care about our lives and the future for our children and beyond, we need to make changes.
And it's fascinating to know that there is an app out there that you can actually track these plastic islands.
Right.
So that's as far as we went. We can track them, but, well, okay, great, but what do we do about it becomes the next question.
Well, there are things that we can do about it. They actually have technology that they can collect those, and there's not a whole lot that can be done with the plastic we already have. These are forever chemicals. We can try to recycle. There's a lot of things that are not recyclable. And when you dig into how recycling is done, you start getting informed on, many, many plastics actually can't be recycled. And so we are stuck with them. But let's stop it now. Let's stop it now. We have made a huge problem. Let's stop this insanity now. Get back to what we were doing before plastic. And not only that, I switched out to, instead of plastic, like Tupperware type things for food, I use all glass. They sell glass with bamboo lids, and I use mason jars for a lot of things. And I just ordered all that stuff online, and within 2 days, I had all of that in my house, and it felt really good. It felt really good to get back to even the nostalgia of having food in mason jars. Like, there's something to it that feels good, that raises consciousness and begins to contribute to a better future. And everyone that visits me, they see that just through emulating a certain lifestyle choice. They see it, and they're starting to do it themselves. So that's a viral energy. That's a contagious wave that starts at a ripple and will become a tidal wave. And so we have to speak out. We have to emulate a better way of doing things, and we have to make a shift pretty quickly.
Well, I like that form of viral, because generally when all this went viral, we're feeding our egos and see how much more that we can get versus, our viral should be particular habits that move forward, that people say, this is just a better direction to go.
Right. Well, there has been connotations associated with viral, and that would be social media at first, but then in this last year, of course, we have the virus, and so people think of that. But what everyone needs to know is that all energy is viral, and that's just how it is, baby. All energy is viral, whether you like that or not. And so what you do, even what you think, is an energy formation, and all of that your actions, your thoughts, your intentions, all of this is contagious. All of it is contagious. And the good, the bad, and the ugly. So this is the viral that is really affecting us, that is so much more impactful than what's going on social media. So, I think we do need to look at that word again, because it sets a mindfulness around this, that when we become aware of our ability to change our environment, of our ability to actually impact those around us, it empowers us.
I have to point out, as we have a couple of minutes left, I remember when we received your book, Do Unto Earth. One night I was just kind of sitting there looking at the cover, and I thought, to me, it was kind of a nice bit of genius to it, because when you look at how it's laid out on the cover, you realize there is the word do, D-U-E.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's about time. The time
exactly.
is due.
Well, thank you for noticing. The cover was illustrated by a wonderful illustrator in England by the name of Andrew Green. He's a professional book illustrator, and he's just genius. His artistry is just genius. And yes, as you look at the cover of our book, Do Unto Earth, and you see Uluru Rock in Australia, and you see Stonehenge in England, and you see Atlas holding the world, and you see an Aboriginal boy, and you see an alien, a gray in fact, and you see pyramids and a dolphin, and all of these things on the cover. It's a mesmerizing cover and a meaningful cover. I mean, it's actually such a pretty book. I just want to hug it. It's really great.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And speaking of England and Stonehenge, that's been a big mystery, the stones of Stonehenge and how they got to where they are. A lot of speculation, but I don't think anybody's really nailed it. Any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, because I asked Pax in the book, so what was so fun about writing this book and also reading the book is how many of our human curiosities are answered. And so while it's this book with the purpose of environmental healing and unity, it's written like this unfolding story. It's written so fun. And as I asked the questions, I dived deep into all of these curiosities. How are the stones at Stonehenge moved? What happened in Roswell in 1947? And Pax just answered. He just let me have at it. And I almost felt like I was, being naughty, asking all of these things, and we're supposed to be focusing on the environment. But I was just so curious, okay, well, I have you in front of me. Can I ask about Stonehenge? And he did say that it will be through our human curiosities that this message will get out to the population, that it's meant to be fun. It's a fun read. So Stonehenge, he says that the stones were moved by teleportation, and that it was teleportation that moved the stones, and it was our ancient ancestors that we might call ETs, but he refers to as our other planetary ancestors, moved the stones for us, and that the people of that time asked for, a monument. They asked for a place of worship. So I said, why such a simple structure, and why did it take? It actually took quite a period of time. When they study those stones, they have determined that, and through archaeologists and anthropologists have determined that Stonehenge was built and erected over a period of time between the Bronze Age and I forget the name of the age, but over this long period of time, actually. And so I said, why would it take so long to build such a simple structure if they're advanced peoples and they're doing it through teleportation? And Pax says that, if they asked for a box, they're not going to build them a skyscraper. So they built them what they asked for, and they just wanted this place of worship. And the circle is very important. Circles hold energy and power. So that was it. It was moved through teleportation. And I asked, how does teleportation work? I'm thinking Star Trek, and it's like this machine that teleports you from place to place. And he says, no, that teleportation is so much more, much more simple than that. It doesn't require any instrumentation. Teleportation is a thought process, a distillation of molecules in one place and a resolution of molecules in another place. And it is done through thought.
And that's a wonderful way to look at it when you consider the John Travolta movie Phenomenon. It was the same thing. He was saying, I just simply ask permission. And
Wow.
you really
Oh,
got
I
to
did.
wrap your head around that for a minute. But I'll tell you, Penelope, as someone who's been a long-time lucid dreamer, it's pretty amazing when you can go into the dream worlds and then you actually are in the bedroom you're sleeping in. I mean, everything looks exactly like it would
Whoa.
be when you're awake, okay? And then you start
Wow.
playing with levitation, and I've been able to do this, where you could pick up whether it's chairs or a lamp or whatever the case is, spin it around in the air. And then I try to come into the waking world and do the same, and wow, there's the struggle.
Wow, that is
So,
so fascinating
yeah.
to me.
Mhm.
So fascinating. Yeah, I
Mhm.
haven't seen, I saw phenomena a very long time ago,
Mhm.
and it'd be interesting to see again. It sounds like a nice little flick for sure. So,
Yeah.
we do talk about movies. We talk about the movie E.T. and Avatar in our book, Do Unto Earth, and I asked, are these things kind of on target with the reality of ET existence? And Peck says yes. And that where do you think Steven Spielberg and James Cameron got their ideas from? They were inspired.
Right, exactly. I know, to let you know too, because I know that you've been a guest on Coast to Coast, is we have a good friend of ours, Sonia Grace,
Oh
who's
yeah.
been on there many times.
Oh.
And in fact, and she's known as Spirit Traveler, Mystic Healer Sonia Grace. And what's fascinating, she's been working on building a series where she actually goes to these places, such as Stonehenge, and
Mm.
she, I guess, to a degree, channels through the spirit story, if you will, about what this
Mm.
is all about. And pretty fascinating. She's been working on that for quite a while. So,
Well, you can tip her off to this then. Pack says that beneath Stonehenge is another circle.
right, and she's actually talked about things like that.
Mm.
That it actually
Great.
goes a lot deeper than that. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
fascinating stuff. So, how
Very.
can people find out more about your work, a website, books, things like that?
Mm-hmm. So the book that we're talking about, Do Unto Earth, can be found on our website, paxwisdom.com. That's PAXwisdom.com. Of course, we're also available in all of the bookstores, Amazon, all of the places, anywhere you like to buy your books, large stores, independent stores. And my personal work, you can find that at viralenergyinstitute.com.
Now, I do have to point out as I'm on your website right now that you go down to the area where it shows the book and then it shows your photograph to the left here where
Mm-hmm.
you can subscribe for your email to sign up for the newsletter that you produce. But I like right above the book, Magic of Viral Energy, that it says, quote, "What are you marinating in?"
Bingo.
That's something for people to really consider because what you marinate in is what your reality becomes. And believe me, I can attest to that.
There you go. Thanks, Daniel. You said that perfectly.
Right on. Well, Penelope, thank you for taking the time to join us on the program. We'll dive more into Do Unto Earth and have you back on the program, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You bet. Take care. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for tuning in. You can discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We do encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter and stay up to date with what's going on in the world of Beyond 50. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program. And remember, wherever you are is where you should be. Have a great day.